Good Monday evening. I'm Chief Meteorologist Emily Walls with Fox 32 Chicago, and we have quite a bit going on in the weather department, maybe not locally, but across the U.S. and then definitely tracking the tropics. There's a lot to talk about. So a few days ago, we were talking about leading up to hurricane season, and we're getting closer to that for the Atlantic, but in the Pacific, hurricane season has already begun. That actually begins on May 15th. So we're just barely into the season and there's already something to talk about. So let's dive right in. We're going to take a look at the Eastern Pacific, and you can see on this map, what I want you to focus on is that cluster of storms that you see developing just south of Mexico. So that cluster has about an 80% chance of forming into a cyclone in the next 48 hours. So by the middle of this coming week, by Wednesday, we could potentially have our first tropical storm of 2025, and that's going to mark both for the Atlantic as well as the Pacific. That's going to go in the books potentially as our first tropical storm. So what would its name be if it does reach tropical storm status with sustained winds of 39 miles per hour? It'll come in as Tropical Storm Alvin. So that's the news that we're going to be awaiting going into the middle portion of this week. But as of now, all signs are kind of a go that we're likely going to be seeing this turning into a cyclone in the next couple of days. So places along the Pacific coast in Mexico could be looking at rip currents, high surf, lots of waves, lots of showers because of this. But as of now, it looks like it is taking more of a west-northwesterly track at about 10 miles per hour. So that's going to, of course, take it out to sea. And once it gets farther away from land, those sea surface temperatures, they are going to begin to drop. So typically, in order to sustain a tropical storm or a hurricane, it does best when you're dealing with waters right around 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and the waters just quite aren't there yet for the Eastern Pacific. So this doesn't look like it's going to blow up into a large hurricane, but again, we could have our first tropical storm of the season in the Eastern Pacific by as early as the middle of this week. Now that's for the Pacific, but take a look at this map here. This graph is showing tropical history and all the activity for the Atlantic. So the seasons are just slightly different. In the Eastern Pacific, it begins on May 15th and lasts through mid-November. And then in the Atlantic, it begins June 1st, lasting until November 30th. And you'll notice here that the highest peak of the season for named storms and hurricanes comes in September. And again, that really comes down to those sea surface temperatures playing a role in that. So again, the season's slightly different between the Eastern Pacific and the Atlantic, but still, we're kind of getting things going here in the next couple of weeks. Let's talk temperatures now. Of course, today is Memorial Day, and for millions of people in the United States, it was a below average day. We had temperatures for a lot of us that were in the 50s, the 60s. Take a look at current temperatures. Of course, it is still very warm across the southern border, down in places like Florida, along the Gulf Coast. But the central U.S., places like Denver and portions of Nebraska and Kansas, only in the 40s and 50s at this hour. So again, way below average. And here locally in the Chicagoland area, we came in today about 10 degrees below average. So typically for this time of the year, late May, your average highs are in the mid-70s, and today we only topped out in the mid-60s. Satellite and radar, take a look at the continental United States right now. There's quite a bit going on across the southern half of the U.S. The northern half is rather quiet right now, not a ton of systems swinging through, but that stationary boundary that you see that's stretching basically from the Atlantic all the way into Texas, that's creating a little bit of havoc out there this evening. If we zoom things into portions of the south and the west, this yellow shading that you see here throughout New Mexico and the panhandle of Texas, that's a severe thunderstorm watch that's going to remain in effect until midnight. There's been severe thunderstorms, there's been tornado warnings coming out of this, and a lot of that is because the dry line is moving in. But if you go a little bit to the east, places like Texas, where you're seeing all of that red shading, that is a tornado watch that's in effect until later on this evening, but there are multiple tornado warnings. In fact, there's one that's actually heading just south of Austin as we speak. So this line of storms right now is pretty powerful. And of course, today's a really big travel day for a lot of people that are trying to get home after traveling for the long weekend. And there have been lots and lots of delays and cancellations coming out of airports, especially in Texas, where we are seeing some of these larger storms. And there's also a big flooding threat stretching from Waco all the way up into northeastern Texas as these storms continue to roll through. And that's not the only place that's dealing with severe weather. We have another batch that's in portions of eastern Alabama that's going to be making its way over into Georgia. Georgia throughout the overnight. So your severe weather outlook for the rest of tonight, notice the bullseye really is in Texas with those storms that I was just showing you heading into Austin as we speak. That's where we have that enhanced risk that's highlighted there in the orange shading. Yellow is the slight risk. That's a level 2 of 5. But fortunately for us locally and us in the Great Lakes region, things are rather quiet, and it's going to stay that way for the next couple of days. This is your severe weather outlook for tomorrow, and it's kind of those same target areas that are unfortunately dealing with the busy weather today. So in Texas, all the way over the Gulf Coast, and then over into portions of northern Florida, in Georgia, that's where we could be seeing some strong to severe thunderstorms going into tomorrow. Now, another big weather headline, in addition to the tropics and those severe storms that are taking place to our south, is the temperature outlook for next week. So the next couple of days here locally, it's going to stay pretty chilly. We have temperatures that are only topping out in the 60s. It's way below average, but this is your temp outlook from June 1st through the 5th, which happens to be Sunday through Thursday of next week. And we're favored to see above average conditions, not just here in Chicago, but also over in Michigan, all the way up into Minnesota, the Dakotas. In fact, the whole northern half of the U.S. almost is going to be seeing at least the chance of warmer than average temperatures. And we're going to keep that going. So once we see this pattern flip going into the month of June, it looks like it's going to last. This is June 3rd through the 9th. So extending that all the way until the 9th of June, we are still strongly favored to see above average temperatures. But by the 3rd through the 9th, we're going to start to share with the eastern half of the U.S. as well. So we've really been stuck in this cooler than average weather pattern. It finally looks like that's going to break down, and we're going to have a little more of a summer-like pattern going into June. And that's a good thing because, of course, we're turning the calendars into meteorological summer. That begins on June 1st. This is your temperature outlook from July, August, and into September. Notice how the majority of the continental United States likely looking at near average or above average conditions going into this upcoming summer. So while it's been a cool month of May for a lot of us, that could really be changing here in the next couple of months. Locally today, we hit 67 degrees at O'Hare. We had an average temperature of 74. Of course, didn't come close to that. Today, we had a low temperature of 46 degrees. Your average is 54, so we were quite a ways below that as well. The next 10 days around here, we're going to be in the 60s Tuesday and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We're counting on that nice warming trend that's going to bring us into the 70s. Again, that's normal. That's average. But then next week, take a look at that. I know your eyes are already jumping to the middle of next week when we could potentially be seeing temperatures well into the 80s. So that summer-like feel, we're going to flip that switch going into June, and it looks like it's going to linger for quite some time. If you're thinking about making your beach plans, however, it's going to be really nice on land. Not so much on the water. Take a look at the water temperatures from today, closer to the lakeshore around Chicagoland in the low 50s. So that's dangerously cold conditions. So if you're going to be going to the beach, going swimming, you're really going to have to limit your time in the water. That is shockingly cold, of course. Tonight, we are going to be dropping down into the upper 40s and low 50s. So about 51 degrees in Chicago. For those of you in the northern portion of Chicagoland, so places like McHenry County, Lake County, you're potentially dropping down into the upper 40s. So it is going to be a cooler than average night for us. We'll have increasing cloud cover though, and that's actually going to save us quite a bit because typically when you bring in that cloud cover during the overnight, it starts to act almost as a blanket to keep in some of that heat that we do have, and that's what's going to be taking place tonight. Then tomorrow, a very comparable day to what we had today. We're looking at mid-60s for a lot of locations, 70s especially near and south of I-80, but there could be this really, really wide temperature range leading from the lakefront all the way to the south suburbs. Notice the lakefront location is going to spend the afternoon in the upper 50s to low 60s, and that is due to those really, really cold water temperatures that I was just showing you. So when you get that lake breeze coming in, it's going to result in much cooler conditions right at the lakefront. So plan ahead for that if you're going to be out and about on your Tuesday. Your 5-day forecast, 65 degrees in Chicago on Tuesday. Wednesday, we also have a chance for scattered showers, but it's not going to be a wash of a day by any means, Tuesday or Wednesday, but we will say the best chance of rain coming early this work week. By Thursday and Friday, we're really going to start to calm things down. Partly sunny skies, but temperatures, that is going to be the big weather story late this week and then certainly going into next week. By the end of this upcoming weekend, it is going to be stunning, feeling like summertime out there, and I can't wait to tell you all about it. We will see you at 9 p.m. this evening on Fox 32 Chicago. I'll have your full forecast.